Hey everyone, today we're going to install Hunyuan3D-2 on Windows and see how well it stacks up against Trellis, which is known for creating high-quality 3D meshes. Right now, 2D to 3D models are being released fast and furious, and Hunyuan3D-2 is another solid addition to the mix. What makes this one stand out is that it doesn't just take images as input, it also has a text to 3D option. So you can generate 3D models from pictures, or you can describe what you want in text and let the model create it for you. In this video, I'm going to be doing three things. First, I'll walk you through step by step how to install the Windows version of Hunyuan3D. Then, I'll compare its model output to Trellis to see how it measures up. And finally, I'll 3D print the same model with Hunyuan3D that I printed with Trellis so we can see which one does a better job. Now, Trellis is an excellent 2D to 3D generative AI, and it produces very high quality meshes. But the trade-off is that it requires a fairly beefy computer to run. One of the biggest advantages of Hunyuan3D is that it can run on a much more modest machine, making it more accessible to people who don't have top-of-the-line hardware. One of the main reasons I'm interested in this model is its ability to generate clean, well-structured 3D meshes, which is critical if you want to take your designs into 3D printing. If you've ever worked with AI-generated 3D models, you know that messy geometry can be a big issue. So I want to see how well Hunyuan3D handles that. This model is developed by Tencent's Hunyuan3D team and follows a two-stage generation pipeline. First, it generates the base shape using Hunyuan3D-DIT, and then it applies textures with Hunyuan3D Paint. The end result? High-resolution, textured models that you can use for animation, game development, or in my case, 3D printing. Another cool thing is that the installation is modular. You can install just the mesh generation module if you only need basic models, or you can add the texture module if you want detailed textures. And if you want to try everything, you can install the full package, including the text to 3D model. To make things easier, I've added chapter markers to this video so you can skip to the section you're most interested in. So let's get started and see just how good Hunyuan3D really is. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is go to the Hunyuan3D GitHub page, which is right here. Now I'm going to put all the links that you need in the description below so you can easily access this information. Once you're on this page, you need to scroll down to about midway in the page, and you'll see a link for a Windows installation tool option. So you click on that, and it'll take you to another page that will allow you to install Hunyuan3D on Windows. So the first thing that you need to know before you even attempt this is that there are some requirements before you try to install this. If you don't meet the requirements, you will not be able to install this 2D to 3D model. It just won't work on your machine. So the requirements are relatively reasonable and minimal, but you do need to have them. So the first thing that you need is the NVIDIA GPU with at least 6 gigabytes of VRAM. So that is minimal. Now they do say here that you can try it with 4 gigabytes, but that it may be very slow on your machine. And the other thing that you need is a GPU driver version that must be newer than March 2024. So any version higher than 550. So once you know that you have those requirements, what you need to do is download this Hunyuan3D Win Portable 7Z file and extract it to a convenient location on your computer. So let's do that. I have already downloaded the file, so I'm just going to go to it in my download page right here, and I'm just going to extract it to my E drive. I'm going to do the installation on my E drive. Now, I already have a version of this on my E drive called Hunyuan3D-2, but I'm going to put a whole new installation just in order to show you how it's done in the same drive. So I'll first of all start by extracting the zip file that we downloaded, that you're going to download onto my E drive. So let's do that. Now, it does take a minute or two to extract the files, and once they're extracted, we can proceed with the installation. Okay, so once all the files are extracted, if you click on this folder, you'll see that there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that we're going to be using in a minute. But the first thing that we're going to do before we do anything is change the name of this. And I'm going to just change it to something that is going to be relatively easy to navigate. So I think what I'll do is I'll just call it Hunyuan3D-2. So let's do that. I'm just going to get rid of Yuan, and we'll just name the folder Hunyuan3D-2. All right, so now what we need to do is basically open a command prompt with an administrative privileges. So the way we do this is by going to the search option here and clicking on that, and you can do a search for CMD, but I've already got it here. But if you don't have it there, just do CMD, and the command prompt option should show up, and you need to open it up as an administrator. So this is very, very important. If you don't open the command prompt as administrator, you won't be able to download the models from Hugging Face. So make sure that you right click on here and you run as administrator. Okay, so at this point, we need to navigate to where we put the folder on the drive, whatever drive you happen to put it in. I happen to put it on my E drive. So I need to go to my E drive and then do a CD, change directory to E Hunyuan3D, or it's CD Hunyuan3D-2, 3D2. All right. So now that we are in the folder, we're ready to go. Now, one thing that's very important is to create a virtual environment. What we're going to do is make sure that all the files are installed in this folder. We don't want them to be installed globally on the computer. We want to install the models in this folder. So everything is going to run basically from within the Hunyuan3D-2 folder. So we're going to create a virtual environment. And the way we do this is by putting in this command, Python mvenv, and it will create a virtual environment for you. Now, I am assuming that you have Python installed on your computer. If you do not have Python installed in your computer, you will not be able to create this virtual environment. So you will need to go to the Python website and download Python 12. I think that Python 12 will work with this. If you're not sure, you can also download Python 11 and install those applications on your computer. But you need to have Python on your computer in order to generate these commands and make them work. I will, of course, put the links to the Python website in the description below. All right, so once you've created the virtual environment, you need to activate the virtual environment. And the way you do this is with this command, venv scripts activate. And you'll know that the virtual environment is activated when you see this venv prefix here in front of the folder. All right, so now we're ready to go. Everything is set up and we can start installing the application. the first thing that we need to do before we install the models is update all the information so that we have the latest version of the app. And we do this by running the update batch. So let's do that. Update BAT. And this will update the information and all the files and everything that we need to get the latest version of this particular 2D to 3D model. So hit that and it will do the update. All right, so it's a very simple procedure, and it will update everything that you need in order to run the latest model. Okay, the next thing that we need to do is download the actual models that will generate all the 3D models and will do all the work for us. And the way we do this is by running this batch command. So to download models.bat, and this will download approximately 26 or maybe even 30 gigabytes of AI models that will do the 3D generation. So you hit enter and it will access Hugging Face Hub and will download the models for you. Now this can take a few minutes, so it's not going to be a fast process. It'll take probably 2 to 3 minutes to download all the models. So I'm going to wait for that to happen, and then I'll come back and we can proceed with the installation. All right, it seems to be done, and that took a long time. On your computer, it might take even longer depending on the download speed that you have. So just be aware that this is not going to be a fast process. I have a fairly fast download speed and it still took quite a while. So once it's finished, it says press any key to continue. So let's just do that. And we're back to the command prompt. So let's just clear the screen here and we can go on to the next part of the installation. All right, so theoretically at this point we can actually run the model. However, we're wanting to install the texture generation option as well. We've just installed the mesh option. So to compile the texture generation part of the model, we enter this batch file command, -compile install texture gen.bat. So these are all batch files that are in the folder that we downloaded, and we're just basically running these batch files. And this one, for some reason, is taking a long time to run. I'm not sure exactly why, but it will eventually run. We just have to wait for it to run properly, and then it will install the mesh part of the model. All right, so it's building the wheel for collected packages and doing all the stuff that it needs to do. It'll automatically do it, and once it's done, we will basically have a mesh creation option as part of the installation. Again, this takes a minute or two, not as long as downloading the models, but it still takes a minute or so. And okay, at this point it's done, so we just hit any key to continue, and we're back to the command prompt. All right, so let's clear the screen, and at this point we can actually run the application. And running the application is very simple. Again, it's another batch file, and it's basically 3-run.bat, and it will run the app. Now, again, when you first run it, it's going to take a couple of minutes. It's not a fast process. So if you're sitting there looking at the screen and thinking nothing is happening, don't despair. It is running. Something is happening in the background, and it'll take a minute or two to run. I have a pretty fast computer, and it still takes a bit of time. So if your computer is slower, you might find that it takes even longer. It does have to basically do a transformer type configuration the first time around. It won't do this every time. So this is something that is a one-time thing. You know, when you open it up again the next time, it won't have to go through that particular part of starting the model. Okay, so the loading of the pipeline components does take a bit of time. You'll find that you'll be waiting for a few minutes, and don't despair. If it seems like it's hanging, just wait, and it will eventually resume. You might see this red error when it starts up. Don't worry about it. It doesn't affect the running of the model. It'll work just fine. You'll also see this memory management for the GPU poor message. Again, don't worry about it. This is something that is known, and it will work despite those messages. And also, there's an EP error. Again, it doesn't really mean anything, and you should just ignore these errors. Okay, so once it runs, you can basically open the app by going to port 8080, localhost port 8080. So let's just do that. We can just open up a new tab and go to localhost 8080 and hit enter. And here we are with the Gradio interface ready to use this application. And we can test it out here by just taking one of these images, popping them down here, and we can generate either the mesh only or generate the mesh and the texture. So let's just do both text mesh and texture by clicking the button here, and it'll work and it will generate it. Now it does take a bit of time. Again, this is not a fast 2D to 3D model generator. It takes a bit of time to do the work, but you know what? It's worth it because the final result is really good. So I am of the opinion that better slow and good than fast and mediocre. And there are some 2D to 3D model generators that are very fast, but the end result is not great, unfortunately. But in this case, you have to wait a bit, but you know you'll get a much better result as a consequence. Okay, so you know just sit there and twiddle your thumbs, and eventually you will see the model. So there it is right here. Now you might be saying, well, okay, this is the mesh, but where's the actual texture? Well, there's another tab here. You need to click on that, and you'll see the texture as well. So as you can see, this is a very nice model. Now, one thing that we don't have yet, though, is the text to 3D model option. So we have the image prompt option, but there's no text to model option because we need to install that. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to install that option. So I'm going to basically minimize this window. We're back at the command prompt. So let's just exit the server. So once we enter control and C, it'll ask if we want to terminate the job, and we'll say yes, and we'll be back in the command prompt. So at this point, we can actually install the text to 3D generator. So the way we install the text to 3D option is by again running another batch file, and the batch file is run dash with text underscore to underscore 3D dot bat, and this will install some models that are required to run the text to 3D. So again, it'll take a bit of time. So let's hit the enter key, and it will download the models and we'll configure what it needs. And at this point, once we're done, we will have the option to run a text to 3D generation model. Again, it'll take a few minutes. This is not as big a download as the previous one, but it's still significant. So in total, you're downloading about 50 gigabytes worth of AI models that will run this particular 2D to 3D generator. So you have to have a fair amount of space on your hard drive in order for this to work. Make sure that you have enough space to download all of these models. Otherwise, it won't work for you. So let's just wait for this to finish, and then we can check it out and see if it's working as it should. All right, so it's done, and now we're ready to go back to the web page. And here we are. If we refresh the page, we should see a tab here that allows us to create a model from a text prompt. So let's refresh it, and there we are. We have a tab that will take us to a text prompt option, and we can say something like a rocket ship. I'll make it very simple. So let's just generate shape and texture, and see what kind of a rocket ship it can make. That's not much of a prompt, by the way. It's a very, very bad prompt. It's not going to do a very good job because it's so general that, you know, it's not going to really know what I want. So it's going to generate something, but in all likelihood, it's not going to do a good job. Now, that brings us to a whole different sort of topic, which is knowing how to prompt. And prompting is something that you really have to understand. And in order to get good models and good answers from LLMs in general, is knowing how to prompt. So there's a whole prompt science emerging that really is about creating the best prompts possible to get you what you're looking for. And that's something that I may actually make a video about sometime in the future, because it's a thing that will become more important as time goes on with the emergence of new large language models and 2D to 3D image generators, and text to image generators, and text to video generators, etc., etc., etc. So again, you can see this is not a fast process. It's taking a while to generate this this model, but eventually it comes through, and we have a rocket. Not a bad looking rocket, actually. If we generate a texture, we can see that there's a texture. I have no idea why it put this little platform on the bottom here. It's not something that we want, but overall, I would say that it's not a bad looking rocket. All right, so now we have everything we want. We have the image to 3D model, and we have a text prompt to 3D model. So the next thing that I'm going to do is basically take an image that I used with Trellis, and I'm going to use it here with Hunyuan3D, and I'm going to generate a 3D model. Then I'm going to print it out, and we're going to take a look and see which is better, Hunyuan3D-2 or Trellis. Both are very good, but we're going to sort of put them side by side and see which generates the better model for 3D printing. All right, so I've already loaded the image into both 2D to 3D model generators to save time, and we're going to start with Trellis. So this is Trellis, and as you can see, Trellis is really an excellent 2D to 3D generator. It's probably the best open source option that's available. So there are other tools like TripoSR and Spar3D, and those work, and they work on minimal sort of CPU configurations, but they don't produce meshes that are clean or detailed like Trellis does. So if we take a look at the 3D model of the night here, we can see that, you know, the model is really well defined, and it is crisp and clean. The mesh looks fantastic. So all aspects of the model look very good and highly detailed. I would say that in terms of detail, Trellis does a really good job. So if we zoom in really close, we can see that there are excellent details on this model. Now, let's take a look at Hunyuan 3D and see how it compares. So here's the model from Hunyuan 3D. And what I would say first and foremost is that, right away I can see that the details are not as sharp or well-defined as the Trellis output. However, like Trellis, it looks like the mesh is clean and ready for 3D printing. Now, the texture is probably better with a Trellis. So if you take a look at the texture here, it looks very much like the original. And I would say that this is probably better with Trellis than it is with Hunyuan 3D. If we take a look at the texture here, it just looks a little bit off. So I would say the Trellis has a slightly better texture than Hunyuan 3D. But since I'm mostly interested in 3D printing, the textures don't really matter. So if you're mostly interested in 3D printing these models, well, texture is not going to really be significant. But if you're doing game development or stuff like that, texture is going to be much more important. So what I've done is I've taken both of these models and I've put them in Blender. And if we take a look at them in Blender, we can see that the Hunyuan 3D model, this one here, actually looks really good. It looks more refined. It looks smoother than the Trellis one. I would say that the Trellis model looks good, very detailed, but it might need remeshing before printing. So again, the Hunyuan 3D-2 model is slightly less defined, but requires fewer resources. And this is a big thing. So if we go to the GitHub page for these two models, we can see that Trellis requires a minimum of 16 gigabytes. This is the original GitHub repository of Trellis. Now, that original installer was taken and a Windows installer was made, which actually can install on a much less intensive system. So with the Windows installer that was created by Igor Ayerny, you only need an NVIDIA GPU with 8 gigabytes of VRAM, as opposed to the original installer, which requires a minimum of 16 gigabytes. So that's really good. However, the Hunyuan 3D-2 is better because it only requires for the Windows installer 6 gigabytes of VRAM, and 4 gigabytes may work, but will be very slow. So again, in terms of the resources that are required, I would say that Hunyuan 3D-2 is much more accessible for users who have lower-end GPUs. But the real test, the final sort of test, is how well they print side by side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the model from Hunyuan 3D-2 and compare it to the Trellis print that I already have, and we'll see which one turned out better. Both Hunyuan 3D-2 and Trellis deliver outstanding results, and as you can see, the differences between them are subtle. The mesh quality in both models is excellent, though Hunyuan 3D-2's mesh appears slightly cleaner, while Trellis provides sharper edge definition. Ultimately, both models produce highly usable 3D outputs. Where Hunyuan 3D-2 really shines is in its efficiency. It requires just 6 gigabytes of VRAM, making it accessible to a wide range of computers. Trellis, on the other hand, demands at least 8 gigabytes of VRAM, and in many cases more. That means not everyone will be able to run it smoothly. If you're looking for a powerful, free, and lightweight 2D to 3D AI generator, Hunyuan3D-2 is an excellent choice. But if your system can handle it, having both gives you the flexibility to choose the best tool for each project. In the end, the best AI model is the one that works for you. So try them out, see which one fits your workflow, and start creating. So there you have it. We've put Hunyuan to the test and compared its results to Trellis. Looking at the final prints, you can see how well it handles details and whether it holds up against a high-quality mesh generator. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the results. Have you tried Hunyuan yourself? Let me know how it worked for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon in the next video. Bye for now.